So yeah, we got to start. How did Joe Praino get into the New York Giants? Our resident expert here.
Yeah, so growing up, grew up in New York, just north of New York City in Westchester. My first sports love was baseball. I was a Mets fan. So as everybody knows, it's always Mets Jets, Mets Jets, and I was a Jet fan for like half a season, and then my brother invited me to a Giants game via one of his friends. And we went to the game. And when you go to a live game, same way I got into the Mets, you go to a live game, you're like, this is my thing. But also, his friend was one of the Maras. So we were like, oh, one of my younger brother's best friends, and a friend of mine now is involved with the team. So I was like, I feel like this has to be our allegiance. Don't tell anybody we were Jets fans. It was
Yeah.
short run. We can deny that ever happened.
Well, then you're our connection. I don't know how detailed I want to get with this. We texted about it a while back, but I did hear from one of the Maras after my series on Dave Gettleman and the New York Giants. So maybe you can broker some type of meeting and we can hash it all out here on the Go Along Pod one of these days, Joe.
I'll see what I can do. I've told the story on the Dirty Sports podcast a couple times. I'm in the midst of what I'm calling beer gate after I accidentally handed about an ounce and a half of beer to somebody underage in the owner's box. So I'm currently on suspension,
Oh,
but
oh no!
not
Oh,
not from games, but from the box.
I hope it
So
wasn't on Soda Appreciation Day or whatever they
no,
call
yeah, it was on PSL Free Pepsi Day or whatever.
Yeah. Oh, that was
Yeah.
brutal. Then that was that the same day that we had the Jake Fromm quarterback sneak on. Yeah, that was rough. Joe Judge, the glory
So
days.
what I wanted to say is we're in the midst of baseball season's underway. I just said I'm a big Mets fan, and the Mets are playing really well, and I'm just like focused on the start of this great Mets season, focused on Knicks playoff basketball. I'm trying to keep the New York Football Giants out of my mind as much as I can because it's just so crazy what's happening with the quarterback room mostly, but just generally, like, what is the direction of this football team? And I don't have an answer for once.
Well, it's great to kind of make you think about those New York Giants here on Substack Live. And for those joining, thank you so much. It's always great to have people watching this live ask questions, chime in, whenever you'd like. Joe Praino is the co-host of Dirty Sports and also the proprietor of his own Substack here himself, which is wildly popular. So we connected through the Adam Carolla show a while back. I heard you listening to the pod. You were producing uh, Adam's show for a while. I want to say, how long was it, Joe?
Close to a year.
Yeah, about a
Yeah.
year. And we did one of these Substack lives at your shop, and we've kind of been texting here and there about the Giants. So I figured on the eve of a very important draft for Joe Shane and Brian Dable and the whole gang out there in New Jersey, we'd welcome you on and try to make sense of it, man, because I don't know how to make sense of it. I like 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 readers know I've been pretty bullish on this regime, and we talked about it last year. I just feel like you've got one of the greatest teachers of the position in Dable. You've got a GM who saw firsthand right here in Western New York what it takes to hunt down, identify, and draft a quarterback that you have conviction in Joe Shane. I was just at Brandon Beat's press conference at One Bills Drive, and Josh Allen. It's wild. That was 8 years ago that they kind of embarked on that journey for their own quarterback. And the Giants, I guess, covered their bases to an extent with Russ Wilson, Jameis Winston, but we want to get your thoughts on Jameis because you have a history with Jameis Winston. But
I,
first off, where do you even start with the New York Giants, the quarterback position, where this thing is going into this season?
I have a long and storied history with both Jameis and Russell Wilson on the Dirty Sports podcast. I think those two plus Kirk Cousins have maybe been the big three of taking the brunt of my like anger and they're overrated. Like I'm always, they're overrated, they're trash, whatever. Like those are three guys that I've gone out and said I do not like them as quarterbacks. And then when they got Jameis, everybody, all the dirty sports fans were like, "This is too funny." And then when they got Russ in the aftermath of that, people are like, are they just clowning you at this point? Because I was a long standing Russell Wilson is overrated. He's a Legion of Boom merchant. It's like, oh, he wins 10 games every year. It's like, and then Geno Smith, quote unquote bust, goes to Pete Carroll's Seattle Seahawks and he wins 10 games and goes. I was like, maybe it's not Russell Wilson, but them getting both those guys, it really is the worst offseason that Joe Praino can imagine for the New York Football Giants. And I understood the Jameis one a little bit more because I was like, we have neighbors. We saw this, we saw kind of like the Odell Beckham, Lil Wayne throwing Eli under the bus thing years ago. I understood Jameis. You come in, you don't really have a situation set. He's going to throw for a lot of yards. He's going to throw a lot of picks. But if you're Malik Neighbors, you're like, oh, I'm gonna be like Jerry Jeudy last year. At the end of last year, like I can have some huge games. There's no reason for me to go anywhere while we sort out this quarterback situation. And this is a guy who keeps the receivers happy in the meantime. Then you go and you get Russ, and it seems like he's going to start. And I'm just going, do we want to win 7 games? Like I've always been kind of a loud. I'd rather win 2 games than win 7 games because what does 7 games get me? A mediocre draft pick. And the Giants, for how many times in the last 5 or 6 years, have ruined their draft position with wins they didn't need. Tommy DeVito wins and Joe Judge wins. It's like we've done this. And now you look at what the Eagles have done. I mean, there's the very that moment a few years ago where they essentially tanked, kept the Giants out of the playoffs, moved up, took Devontae Smith. They did the whole thing. They built in the draft, and now the worst thing, I hate the Eagles winning the Super Bowl more than I enjoy the Giants winning the Super Bowl.
Ooh.
Like it's the worst thing. And so this offseason, you go Eagles Super Bowl, Jameis, Russ. I'm just like, what are we doing here? Now I've been told I was like getting a pretty crowded quarterback room when you also re-sign Tommy DeVito and there's these quarterbacks to be drafted. I was told by a couple different people, listen, if we liked any of these quarterbacks, we wouldn't be signing Jameis and Russ. And that's fine. If you want to draft or, if you want to sign guys because you don't necessarily want to draft one of these guys, you want to take a not quarterback at that spot, I get it. But also, why Russ and why Jameis? You know?
You'd prefer Aaron Rodgers, Joe? I mean, really, there were many options.
I'll tell you what, I would have preferred Jake Browning. Like
I like Jake Browning.
go out there and spend a little middle round draft capital on a guy who has some starting experience. Like, why are we signing guys who we know exactly what they are?
And I think I wrote at the time too. Why aren't teams offering Cincinnati a premium pick, whatever you want to define premium for Browning? You
Yeah,
saw what he did late in that season. It wasn't like I mean, yeah, he had T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, but they were battling some injuries. Things weren't perfect around Jake Brown. It wasn't like he was nickel and diamond. He was pushing the ball down the field. I've talked to him one on one. He's got some shit to him. He's got some swagger. He's got that whatever that it factor is. I feel like you've got a chance with him. I'm really shocked that you know what? Maybe it's not over though. Maybe we do see a Jake Browning trade. The Bengals have 6 picks. Whether it's the Giants or somebody else, I wouldn't be surprised if that
I
became a.
just I my issue is, are the Giants a quarterback away from being a contender no matter who the quarterback is? Like, I mean, we're talking about with the situation with the Giants right now. Are the Giants Joe Burrow away from being a contender? Are the Giants Pat Mahomes away from being a contender? Like this, it's not a great situation. So I feel like you go out and you get you spend a little bit of money, not a ton of money on these guys, but you sign two quarterbacks, neither of which have a great recent history. Jameis has no good history. And you're like, what's the goal here? Like, I hate the goal being like, let's be mediocre. When they signed Russ, a friend of mine said, I'd rather they start Jameis. And I said, I'd rather they start Daniel Jones. Like, what is the plan here? At least when you were starting Daniel Jones and he was bad, he was your guy. You were trying to prove that he could work. What are we trying to do with what's the best case scenario of Russell Wilson this year?
Well, the Colts game didn't help. I don't want to list off all the excuses because you're right. You have to have a plan. You have to attack the quarterback position wherever you're picking. Right, have conviction in somebody. Go get them and be right. But you mentioned Tommy DeVito. That cost him Jane Daniels and Drake May. Then you've got Drew Lock beating the Colts. That cost you Cam Ward. They've definitely had a string of very bad quote unquote success late in these seasons. And they probably did their homework on Shedeur Sanders. They've done a ton of homework on Shedeur Sanders, I know, as I'm sure you do too. Anything's possible, I suppose. You can't rule it out, but maybe they just really don't like the top of the class because I feel like you still have to draft somebody. And I think that they will double up. How could you not double up if you're the New York Giants? I mean, you just saw the Falcons do it after they paid Kirk Cousins $100 million guaranteed. Then they draft Michael Penix, and Cousins breaks down. They bench him. They start Penix. He shows you something in 3 games. You're in pretty good shape. So I don't know. The scouts told Bob McGinn at our site. If people have read it, check it out. It's a bad quarterback class.
Yeah.
It reminds a lot of scouts of the Pickett, Ritter, Malik Willis, Matt Corral, Brock Purdy draft. But man, you hired these guys because of their expertise in the position. Can you get excited about anybody in the second round range, like a Jalen Milroe? What does Brian Dable do with him, or Tyler Shuck? Is there a fit out there that entices you if you're the New York Giants and gives? I think you got to have some hope in the quarterback position
I gotta
beyond
say that listen,
somebody day two.
I was such a big fan of the Dable hire. I was such a big fan of what he did in year one. I trusted them when they were making the decisions because I was such a big fan of what they've done so far. But when you go and you sign Russ Wilson and Jameis Winston, now I'm like, have you guys just lost the plot? Like now I'm like, if this is who you think you should sign in free agency, do I trust you to draft the right quarterback in the second round, or certainly not at the time? We, like you said, it's a bad quarterback class, so they're not going to take. But I mean, we saw it last year. Like, we're not seeing. There's not a growth happening in this football team. It feels like everything right now is a let's try to get through one more year. Let's not get fired. Like, these all feel like don't fire me moves instead of like we're trying to win the Super Bowl moves. And I get that you can't go from being one of the worst teams in football to winning the Super Bowl overnight, but like we're a couple years removed from winning a road playoff game. Like, it's not like it was bad. It was not like it's only been bad for 2 decades.
I guess, yeah, it's hard to disagree with any of that, Joe. But I'm not as grim as I mean. The last year's draft was pretty good, right? I mean, Malik Neighbors,
Yep.
Tyler Nubin, Tyrone Tracy, Theo Johnson, just a corner I'm forgetting. Is it Cordell Flott?
Yep. Yep.
So not a bad nucleus, but that is on the heels of some rough picks. I mean, it's Kayvon Thibodeau on the block in the same top 10 as Evan Neal. That is brutal. But I feel like the best case scenario for the Giants is you get maybe the best player in the draft, Abdul Carter. Draft him, throw him into that D line. I mean, this is what they did. They drafted, I want to say, Matthias Kiwanuka when they had Strahan and Tuck and all those guys, and they draft JPP in what was it, 2010, when they had all those D linemen, and they won Super Bowls off of both of those seasons. Not saying they're going to be, celebrating the confetti out there at Santa Clara this year, but get the best player in the draft and then aggressively try to get your guy. And maybe the report, I think it was Connor Hughes. He's pretty plugged in. reported today that Dable is a fan of Jackson Dart, and pretty simple offense with Lane Kiffin. It's read one, hit that read. But maybe he's got it to him though. CJ Stroud was, you know, it wasn't asked to do the same exact thing as Jackson Dart, but that was the criticism for Stroud. He
Yeah.
wasn't through the progressions, but he had that in him. He proved he's got that in him. So maybe Jackson Dart. I'm being sunny side up for everybody here.
Yeah.
Maybe
Listen,
he can read the field, and he's got the big arm and athleticism, and he's perfect for Dable. Personality wise, Daniel Jones was not. I mean, their personalities could not have been more different. Daniel Jones and Brian Dable. Maybe Jackson Dart is that guy. So then you get the best player in the draft. You trade up ahead of Pittsburgh. You get Jackson Dart, and the future's bright, baby. The Giants will be back in the playoffs, and we're gonna hit retweet on One Giant Leap, our series from last August.
I listen, I'm all about that. Like that's the plan that I like because if you look at the success the Giants had, in the Eli Manning and the Tom Coughlin regime, there wasn't a ton of like quote unquote weapons. There wasn't a ton of quote unquote playmakers in the defensive backfield or even at linebacker. It was all the trenches. It was we're going to get after the quarterback. We're going to draft defensive tackles and defensive ends, even though we have them. We're going to run, we're going to run guys in and out and keep them fresh. And that's how they take down the Patriots twice, getting pressure on Tom Brady. They block for Eli Manning. I will die on the Eli Manning is one. I know everybody's on Eli Manning was one of the most overrated quarterbacks of all time. I was like, I'm on the Eli Manning is one of the most underrated quarterbacks of all time. I don't think Eli Manning ever had a great team for like a truly great team, and he won Super Bowls with two mediocre teams because in a couple of seasons they actually got after the quarterback and they actually protected him. And I think that's what the Giants have to get back to. I mean, historically, it's a team that wins when their defense is good. They're not this. They've never been a high-powered offense. It's just build the trenches, play some defense. You want to give Jackson Dart a shot after you let Russell Wilson embarrass himself for a couple of games, play mediocre? Fine. Like, let's do it. But you got to build, you need building blocks. And it's been too long that they've been trying to get some superstar that's going to save the whole franchise. And then it doesn't work. And then that superstar gets upset and is like, I don't like it here. And then they're gone. And I think you just have to really build this team from the ground up. And I still like Dable. I still like Shane. It's just it's getting late early.
It's a good reminder to trust your gut too when you're consuming this sport. And when I would watch Daniel Jones from afar, you see how serious he is. Like a lot of quarterbacks, doesn't say a damn thing in his press conferences. I get it, but then I was up close with him, and he is just very serious, direct, punch in, punch out. I'm sure he works his ass off. Like teammates love him. They see what he's doing behind the scenes, but couldn't have been more different than a Josh Allen, just free balling out there, play to play. I mean, there's a just a fun element to the way that Josh Allen plays football that I think Dable could relate to. I mean, these two were unbelievably close off the field. They're on the back deck talking late at night, like with they were it was almost like a father-son relationship in the sport. As close as you can get is what Bill's teammates would just tell me one by one. And when I talked to Daniel Jones at training camp last year, I kind of love that he was pissed off about the Hard Knocks thing. It's like, okay, he's got a little edge to him. Um, I talked myself into it, like with this coaching staff, and now he's got a true number one. This thing can work, but the personalities really have to match. So I would just love to be a fly on the wall for Brian Dable, Shea Tierney, that Giants coaching staff, getting to know a Jackson Dart, because everything you hear about Jackson Dart is he does have that swagger to him. We know Shador Sanders does, but
Yeah.
I feel like that matters. I don't know how to quantify it, but you've watched this team
I
closely.
think I think you're completely right. I think it's the quarterback position. You need a confidence. You need a confidence. Not just you don't. It's not just about that swagger. It's about the confidence in making those reads, the confidence in making those
Yeah,
throws. It just felt like Daniel Jones really would only get confidence for moments at a time. And I
yes,
think I think if I have a criticism of Dable, it's like you watch what some other teams do with quarterbacks that they're not that confident in, that maybe the coaching staff isn't like. I was critical of the Eagles last year. I was like, down the stretch, it didn't feel like Nick Sirianni was super confident in Jalen Hurts. It never felt
Jalen
like,
Hurts didn't sound like he's like, get the straight jacket off me, or
yeah,
whatever he said. It's nice to get the straight jacket off after that one.
yeah, and you look at McVay with when he had Goff, you know there was not that confidence there, but then they're putting those guys in position to make easy plays. I feel like Dable with Jones was like, I'm not going to take it easy on you. I'm not putting you in position to make easy plays because I want you to show me that you've got a little Josh Allen in you, that you can make that you're confident enough to make throws where maybe you shouldn't. And I'm not sure Daniel Jones fit the bill for that. I think he needed a little bit more of the straight jacket that we've seen some of these other great offensive coaches put on some of these guys to help them develop confidence. And I also never understood when we got to that moment of Saquon and Daniel Jones both needing a contract simultaneously. It's like everybody knew what Saquon was, even if the Giants weren't ready to use it like the Eagles used it. But I think everybody, even after that Vikings win, were like, all right, that was a nice little season and a nice little game by Daniel Jones, but he didn't look great in the Philly game the week after. Why aren't we going the Washington route that they did with Kirk Cousins and just franchise him if you have to until he's obviously the guy. I mean, that moment where they franchised Saquon and they paid Daniel Jones, it's like that's the moment where everything kind of went haywire, and it's going to be, can this leadership in Dable and Ching, will they ever recover from that moment?
Man, he's off of a playoff berth, a road playoff win. There were moments late in that season. Again, the Colts, right? A win against the Colts kind of gets you thinking a certain way about Daniel Jones. But I think the miscalculate. So part of me gets it. You got to pay him, and you gave yourself the 2-year escape hatch, and 40 million a year. Yeah, it's a lot of money, but it's a quarterback position. At the time, it's like, okay, he is maybe 10th, 11th best. You can talk yourself into it. I feel like the miscalculation on the Giants' part was with how Daniel Jones would kind of handle this contract, how he was wired mentally. I had somebody in that organization tell me that he was a little upset about the contract, which is kind of surprising. Telling people on the team, it's really only a 2-year deal,
Wow.
which is kind of wild, right? Like, dude, you're making north of 40 million a year, or
Yeah.
40 million a year. It's pretty good being Daniel Jones. Life is good. I think that surprised some people in the building to hear that. And then you made a great point on the confidence with just seeing it, trusting it, pulling the trigger. Man, there was a corner route. I want to say it was against Pittsburgh, a primetime game when the ship started sinking. And Troy Aikman called out. Troy Aikman was actually great on games last year. He was really honest, unlike a lot of these former players calling
Yeah,
games.
yeah.
He's
Troy,
like, look, he's
you know,
open. Pull the
as a
trigger.
totally. Troy's been fantastic, and it's like feels like as Troy's gotten in his older age, he's like, I'm just going for it at this point. Like, how much longer am I here? Yeah. No, I completely agree, and it's funny that I didn't know that about him, about Jones's like feelings on the contract, but we were just talking about my Mets before. This Mets team right now is playing as well as they are because Pete Alonso got a basically 2-year deal with a 1-year out, and now he's like, I'm gonna show you guys that you fucked up, and now it's gonna cost you $400 million if you want to
Right.
keep me. And that's the complete opposite way that Daniel Jones handled it. Not, I'm gonna show you. It's like, oh, you're gonna groan and you're gonna grumble about it, and then you're gonna be out of the fucking off the roster in 2 years.
Totally, because it's not just that it's the hard knocks. I mean, he told me how upset he was by that. It wasn't fun to see. I forget his exact wording on it, but you take it two ways. Which, okay, you see it, it should piss you off. I guess it's okay to be pissed off, but like, do something with it, right? Let it drive you, let it fuel you, instead of maybe grumbling and being a little overly sensitive. And I didn't realize it at the time, but it was the latter for Daniel Jones. Like, he kind of, these little things, I think, got to him and hurt his confidence in a way that was detrimental on the field. And the personalities are just so different. I mean, you can watch it in training camp practice. He'd hit somebody on a touchdown in like a red zone drill, and Dable's pumping a fist, or Shea Tierney, the quarterback's coach, is smacking him on the ass, and they're getting all jacked up, and it's just it's either the cool confidence, we do like that,
Yeah.
describing quarterbacks that way, and you could look at Daniel Jones that way, but he just wasn't that Josh Allen that Brian Dable was used to. He coached Brett Favre back in the day with the Jets too, where you just both have the same energy. You're both on the same wavelength, and I don't know how that manifested the field, but they weren't compatible, and they kind of forced this marriage too long.
And one thing that I think Giants fans got excited about when Daniel Jones was first drafted was sort of the comparison in his attitude and the way he carried himself with Eli Manning, which was like kind of that, quiet confidence and that herder kind of look. And everybody's like, he's kind of goofy, but look what the last goofy guy did. But then you get into what you were just talking about. It's like Eli Manning would never have feelings about what happened on Hard Knocks or feelings about how much he was getting paid. It's like it's about winning football games,
Yeah.
and it's about preparing for the next week. All that like cliche stuff. I always said Eli Manning's like lives the cliche. Like he's not saying it because he was taught to say it. He's just a quarterback robot who's like, yeah, we're just preparing for next week. Like I met Eli in the locker room a number of times. I'd be like, are we going to win next week? He's like, we're gonna try real hard and practice this week, and we're gonna, we're gonna prepare. And I know coach is gonna have us prepare on Sunday. And I was like, oh, dude, I'm not a reporter. I'm just like shooting the shit. He's like, Coach Coughlin will get us prepared. I was like, oh, that's just who you are, dude. And that's what Daniel Jones didn't have. He didn't have a confidence in who he was as a player and like kind of as a person. You would feel like sometimes. And yeah, I like the one thing I don't want to see is Daniel Jones go throw for 400 yards and run for 115 wherever somewhere else. That's gonna
Right.
break me.
Jay Steichen unlocks the greatness of Daniel Jones with Indianapolis. Yeah, you don't have to hold your breath for that.
Yeah,
I see it. But great point on Eli Manning, though. I kind of gained an appreciation for Eli with through Aaron Rodgers, where I write something critical of Aaron Rodgers, or somebody else writes something critical. There's something out there, and he always has to respond. He gets angry. It's very central to everything in his peripheral, his orbit, how he operates day to day. And I'm thinking, well, how would Eli Manning handle this situation? He wouldn't even blink. I mean, he's on the back of those tabloids nonstop. Those
yeah,
full seasons, he's getting killed, and and it's real. To your point, it's genuine. So then you get into the playoffs. You can go into Lambeau Field and beat the 15-1 Packers, or you go to San Francisco, you're getting the snot beat out of you. I mean, that was an unbelievable performance by
oh yeah, that
that line, just whacking him around all game. He keeps picking him up, his shoulder pads sticking out. Unreal game to where I think I'm very malleable. I can be convinced that he is a Hall of Famer and he is actually underrated for those two playoff runs alone. But you get those two playoff runs because of everything you're saying here.
yeah. And you were talking about Aaron Rodgers. I was such an Aaron Rodgers fan as a player. I go everywhere I go. People are like Aaron Rodgers, Aaron Rodgers. I see him up in Lake Tahoe every year at the celebrity golf tournament. I always tell him I sign autographs as you, bro, and I charge people $20. And he's like, "That's hilarious, man." I liked Aaron Rodgers as a player. It seemed like I liked Aaron Rodgers as a guy. But Eli and Aaron Rodgers, the last few years for them has changed the way people feel about them, and it's all them appearing outside of football. Everything Eli's done with the Manning cast and on ESPN, people go, "Oh my God, he's so funny. I like him so much more than I used to." And every time Aaron Rodgers talks, you like him less and less and less. It's like Aaron Rodgers, while still playing, should have taken a page out of the Eli Manning playbook and just been like, "I'm not doing a podcast, a TV show, nothing." But he can't help himself. And now where is he? It's crazy to think about the career Aaron Rodgers had and that he's just floating right now.
Yeah. At the end of the day, Eli would never make himself the victim, and Aaron, as recently as last week, perpetually makes himself out to be the victim in countless ways. So I think that's a win for the New York Giants this offseason. To
Well,
avoid that landmine is a win for Joe Shade and Brian Dable.
we started this little live talking about it, but as down as I get about being a Giants fan, I always go, well, at least I didn't stick with the Jets.
Yeah,
It could always be worse.
that's
You
fair.
know, some teenager named Brick could be our shadow GM. You know,
Looking at the Madden ratings, right? You don't have that. We don't think.
we
But
don't
yeah.
think.
All right. Well, we just solved all of the issues for the New York Giants. So just wrap it up then. With your dream scenario, what gets Joe Praino, comedian, co-host of Dirty Sports, Substack extraordinaire, what gets you back on the New York Giants train, feeling good about 2025?
I think it's going to be hard for me to feel good about 2025 before 2025 starts. Like, I don't think that there's really anything that could happen in this draft where I'd be like, oh my god, this is great. But I'd like to see them, like we said, try to build from the trenches, take a shot on Dart or whoever in a later round, and or obviously not with one of those, not with our top three pick. And then see what happens. And then if we start the year and it looks better, listen, I'm a sucker. I'll be back in so fast. I'm a diehard. I'm a diehard for all my teams. It's not going to take a lot to get me back in. But I just don't want to win 7 games.
Yeah.
If we're gonna be bad, we know the answer's out there. We know there's another Manning just ready to be drafted. Like if it gets bad, let's just lose all the games and then just get another out of the bloodline and give me Arch. So, I'd like to see us get a lot of building blocks in this draft. I'm not really hopeful for 2025, but show me that we're building something for 2026. And and listen, the NFL is not a league where people tank that often, but it's going to take a lot for me to get excited for this year.
Well, those are solid points all around. I think the Arch Manning scenario would be a fun one to for anyone to follow. But that was great, Joe. Thanks so much for hanging out. We got to do it again.
Absolutely, man. Anytime. We gotta have you on some dirty sports. As maybe we'll have you on to like break down the draft after it happens. You're
Yeah.
so knowledgeable, and for anybody that's tuning in via my Substack or the Dirty Sports, give Tyler a follow. It's the greatest NFL Substack there is. I'm such a fan, dude. I'm so glad that we got to do this today.
Too kind, too kind. And I will reciprocate that praise. Everybody out there, sign up, subscribe to Joe. Great dude. And you're gonna laugh watching the pod. And you're always firing out these Substack lives, which are great. So
Yeah. I'm gonna be doing some Substack lives for some of these Knicks playoffs game. Crazy Knicks fan, and I like having people there just to like keep me from just
yeah,
like screaming at my television.
go net. We should have said. All right, I almost said Nets. Go Pistons. Right. We want Cade Cunningham to keep this up. No. I like the Knicks. I like the way they play. They're kind of like the antithesis of everything NBA 2025.
Yeah.
Actually, like playing some defense, some mid-range jumpers here and there, and I just jacking up 53. So I'm all in on the Knicks.
Thanks, dude.
All right, thanks, Joe, and thank you everybody for hanging out with us. This was great.
Later, guys.